Close your eyes. Picture the Sahara. What do you see? An endless ocean of sand, sculpted by a wind that has blown for millennia. A place of profound emptiness, a monument to the planet's power to reclaim and erase. We see it as a final chapter, a landscape where history has ended. But what if we are looking at it all wrong? What if that immense, golden desolation is not a tomb, but a shroud? A delicate, deliberate blanket of silica and time, drawn over a history so vast, so impossibly advanced, that its revelation would not just rewrite our past, but shatter our understanding of what it means to be human. What if the desert isn't empty, but is instead the most perfect hiding place in the world? This is a journey into that quiet, hidden space. It is an exploration of a possibility that whispers from beneath the dunes, a story that the wind carries but never fully tells. If this kind of deep, contemplative mystery resonates with you, if you enjoy wandering through the great what-ifs of our collective story, consider subscribing to our channel. Here, we don't search for easy answers, but for more beautiful questions. We invite you to join us as we drift through these forgotten timelines, seeking not conclusions, but a deeper sense of wonder about the world and our place within its silent, unfolding narrative. Your presence here helps us continue to explore these quiet corners of existence. Let us travel back, far beyond any recorded history, to a time when the world was painted in a different palette. Our destination is North Africa, approximately 12,000 years ago. The great ice sheets of the north are in retreat, and the planet's pulse is changing. The Sahara is unrecognizable. It is not a desert, but a sprawling, vibrant canvas of life, a world of green and blue. This is the zenith of the African humid period, an ephemeral paradise stretching for millions of square miles. A network of colossal rivers, some wider and more powerful than the modern Nile, carve through lush grasslands and deep forests, their waters flowing toward an immense inland sea, a freshwater ocean known to geologists as Lake Megachad. Imagine the air here, thick with the scent of wet earth, of pollen from countless species of flowering plants, of life in its most unbridled form. The savannas are teeming with creatures that now exist only as ghosts in our fossil record. Great herds of aurochs, the giant buffalo Pelorovis, and the elegant booble hartebeest. Under a sky unpolluted by artificial light, the stars would have appeared not as distant points, but a dense, shimmering river of diamonds, a celestial ceiling so bright it would cast soft shadows on the land. This was a planetary-scale cradle, a world brimming with an almost infinite sense of potential, patiently awaiting a spark of consciousness unlike any that had come before. Across this vast, fertile landscape, small bands of early Neolithic humans moved with a quiet grace. Their existence was a delicate dance with the rhythms of their environment, a cycle of seasons and migrations that was woven into the very fabric of the land. They followed the great herds, their lives dictated by the rains and the ripening of wild grains. Their stories, their cosmologies, are painted on the rock faces of places like the Tassili Niger, elegant, fluid figures of swimmers in long-vanished rivers, of hunters pursuing mythical beasts, and of shamanic figures with star-shaped heads, their arms raised to the heavens. Their world was one of immediate reverence for the sun, the water, and the life that surrounded them. Their tools were of stone and bone, their communities transient, their impact on the world almost invisible. They lived in a state of symbiosis, a part of the ecosystem rather than its master. Their world was vast, wild, and fundamentally untamed by any grand design or overarching ambition. It was a time of simple beginnings, not of empires, a world defined by questions whispered around a fire, not by answers carved into stone. This was the known world, the accepted baseline of human development, a slow and steady climb from the simple to the complex. But in this green and vibrant Eden, something else was about to appear, something that defied every known law of cultural and technological evolution. The story we tell ourselves about our own beginning is a simple one,
a comforting tale of slow, linear progress. It speaks of small hunter-gatherer tribes, their lives dictated by the patient rhythms of the earth, gradually discovering fire, then the wheel, then agriculture. This narrative is etched into our collective consciousness, a straight line drawn from the cave to a skyscraper. The Green Sahara fits perfectly into the early chapters of this story. The rock art, the simple tools, the nomadic footprints, they all confirm what we believe we know. They paint a picture of our infancy, a time of primitive grace before the grand, complicated drama of civilization began. It is a foundation built on the assumption that we understand the starting point, that the first steps were small and tentative. But this neat, orderly timeline rests on a fragile assumption that the Earth keeps a perfect record. We forget that the planet is not a passive archivist, but an active and often violent editor of its own history. The African humid period was an anomaly, a temporary paradise born from a subtle wobble in the Earth's orbit.
And when the planet's rhythm shifted once more, that paradise was undone with a finality that is difficult to comprehend. The monsoons, the life-giving breath of that world, retreated south. The great rivers slowed, choked on their own silt, and vanished. The vast lakes evaporated under an increasingly merciless sun, leaving behind ghostly plains of salt and dust. The green retreated, and the sand advanced, a slow, silent tide of golden erasure. Our knowledge of this lost world is therefore built on fragments, on the few precious whispers that survived this planetary-scale forgetting. Archaeologists sift the sands at the desert's edge, finding shards of pottery, meticulously knapped flint arrowheads, and the occasional human burial, the bones stained by ancient ochre. These discoveries are invaluable, yet they are like finding a single water-damaged page from a library of millions of books. They tell us about a way of life, but they cannot tell us about everything that was lost. The immense heart of the former Sahara, now buried under thousands of feet of sand, remains a terra incognita, a blank space on our historical map as vast and mysterious as the surface of another planet. We are weeding the margins of a story, assuming it represents the entire text. Within these margins, however, there are whispers of something that doesn't quite fit the simple narrative. In the remote Egyptian desert, far from the Nile, lies Nabta Playa. Here, around 11,000 years ago, nomadic cattle herders erected the world's oldest known stone circle, a precise astronomical calendar that predates Stonehenge by millennia. It is a quiet anomaly, a flicker of complex, abstract thought where we expected to find only the daily struggle for survival. How did a society of pastoralists, without permanent settlement or agriculture, develop the sophisticated understanding of the cosmos necessary to build such a device? It is a question that hangs in the dry desert air, a subtle but persistent challenge to our timeline of intellectual development, suggesting the dawn of human genius may have broken much earlier than we imagine. The challenge we face is one of perception. Our scientific instruments are designed to find the signatures of civilizations we understand, our own. We search for the chemical traces of industry, the right-angled foundations of cities, the scars of large-scale agriculture. We use ground-penetrating radar that sends signals into the earth, but the echoes that return are often muffled and distorted by layers of wet sand, salt, and dense rock, creating a ghostly, unreadable map. We are, in essence, listening for a familiar song in a language we have never heard before. What if the signature of a truly advanced intelligence was not one of disruption, but of harmony? What if it left behind not ruins, but subtle resonances in the very fabric of the stone and sand? Perhaps the greatest gap in our knowledge is a philosophical one. We define civilization through a very specific lens: growth, expansion, monumental construction, and written records. It is a definition rooted in the idea of permanence, of leaving an indelible mark upon the world. But is this the only valid expression of a high consciousness? Could a society achieve a profound understanding of physics, mathematics, and the cosmos, yet choose not to build empires? Could it have valued transience over permanence, observation over conquest, and silence over proclamation? We assume that any advanced intelligence would be compelled to shout its existence to the heavens, but what if its ultimate wisdom was expressed in a whisper, or not at all?
History, we must remember, is not the story of what happened. It is the story of what survived. It is a narrative written by the victors, not just of wars, but of the slow, indifferent war against time itself. The Sahara is the ultimate victor in this conflict. Its relentless winds are a form of perpetual erosion, grinding mountains into dust and monoliths into memory. Its shifting dunes are a patient burial shroud, capable of swallowing entire landscapes and hiding them for eternity. To look upon the Sahara and assume its emptiness is a sign of absence is to fundamentally misunderstand its nature. Its silence is not a void, it is a seal, a lock placed upon a chapter of existence so remote that we lack the key to even recognize the door. Imagine a technology not of metal and circuits, but of frequency and form. A civilization that didn't mine the earth for ore, but instead learned to fuse the sand beneath their feet into glass-like structures using focused sound or solar energy. Imagine buildings designed not for shelter, but as acoustic resonators, built to amplify the planet's natural geomagnetic hum. What would the archaeological signature of such a people look like? From a satellite, their geometric complexes might be mistaken for strange natural geological formations. Their tools, if they used any, might have been biodegradable or ephemeral. We are searching for pottery and steel, when we should perhaps be searching for impossible patterns and lingering vibrations. This possibility forces us to confront the linearity of our own story. We see ourselves at the apex of a long, unbroken climb, the undisputed inheritors of the planet's consciousness. The idea of a predecessor, of another, perhaps even greater, intelligence blooming and vanishing in the deep past, is profoundly unsettling.
It suggests that history is not an arrow pointing ever upward, but a cycle. It hints that consciousness may be a recurring phenomenon that the planet itself cultivates, which rises, achieves a certain understanding, and then recedes, making way for the next iteration. In this model, we are not the final word, but merely the current chapter in a much longer, more mysterious book. The most profound desert, then, may not be the one of sand and rock, but the one that lies within our own imagination. Our inability to conceive of a civilization so utterly alien to our own values of accumulation, legacy, and permanence is the true barrier to discovery. We are limited by the vocabulary of our own experience, so we dismiss the anomalies as curiosities and the blank spaces on the map as empty because the alternative is too vast to contemplate. The alternative suggests that a form of humanity existed that achieved a state of being so complete, so attuned to the cosmos, that it felt no need to leave a scar on the world, choosing instead to leave only a silent, mathematical proof of its passage. And so we return to the great ocean of sand, but we see it differently now. It is no longer an endpoint, a testament to desolation. It is a repository of a profound secret, guarded by heat and wind and time. Beneath the surface, in the deep, undisturbed layers of compressed earth, the story is waiting. It is a story not of kings and empires, but of a quiet, staggering intelligence that chose a different path. The sand does not just cover this lost world, it insulates it from our nosy, frantic present. It preserves the stillness, the silence of a people who understood something we have yet to learn. The question is not whether we can find them, but whether we are ready to listen to their silence. Let us begin with the tools of our modern age, the senses we have extended into the sky and deep into the earth. From orbital platforms, satellites gaze down with eyes that see beyond the visible spectrum, mapping heat signatures and mineral compositions across the endless dunes. They trace the faint ghosts of ancient riverbeds, arteries of a world long dead, now buried beneath a shroud of sand. On the ground, ground-penetrating radar sends pulses of energy into the silent depths, listening for the echoes of what lies beneath. These are our methods of inquiry, our way of asking questions of a landscape that seems to offer only silence. We are searching for a whisper in a library of stone, hoping to find a pattern in the static of deep time. These instruments, for all their power, are calibrated to our own expectations. They search for the familiar signatures of human endeavor, the straight lines of walls, the dense clusters of settlements, the chemical residue of metallurgy. But what if a civilization operated on principles entirely alien to our own? What if their structures were not built against nature but in concert with it, their forms so perfectly integrated into the landscape that our satellites mistake them for escarpments and mesas? Our search is like that of a fisherman using a net with holes a mile wide, hoping to catch a creature that is as subtle and pervasive as the water itself.
Are we even looking for the right thing? The Sahara actively resists our inquiry. The very sand that forms its surface is a veil of silica that scatters radar signals. Deeper down, layers of salt and mineral deposits, left behind by evaporated prehistoric lakes, create false echoes, ghost images that shimmer and vanish with each new scan. Moisture trapped in deep aquifers can absorb our signals entirely, creating vast zones of absolute blackness, regions of our map that are simply marked unknown. The desert does not just hide its secrets, it uses its very composition as a form of camouflage, a geological cloaking device that renders our most advanced technology almost blind. It guards its past with a quiet, elemental stubbornness. Consider the data that does return. Satellite magnetometers, which measure the planet's magnetic field, have revealed enormous, continent-spanning anomalies deep beneath the sand. Geologists attribute these to variations in the Earth's crust, vast deposits of iron-rich rock from the planet's formation. But these explanations are themselves a form of assumption. Could these magnetic signatures be something else? Could they be the lingering fields of a technology that operated on a planetary scale, a silent, humming net that has long since fallen dormant, but has left its indelible magnetic footprint on the very bedrock of the continent? A ghost in the machine of the world itself. Our geological maps show us the faint outline of the Tamanrasset River, a prehistoric watercourse that would have been the 12th largest on Earth, draining a basin the size of France. Its fossilized arteries lie buried under hundreds of feet of sand, a lost world traced by radar from space. We know it was there, we know it nourished a vast ecosystem, but what lies within its deepest channels, preserved in the anaerobic silt and mud? The technology to excavate on such a scale is beyond us, so we are left to wonder. What secrets, what proofs of life, what impossibly preserved remnants lie sleeping in that dark, silent riverbed, waiting for a future archaeology we have not yet invented?
In shallower regions, near the desert's modern fringes, ground-penetrating radar has indeed found the ruins of small Neolithic villages, confirming the story we already know. But venture deeper into the great sand seas, into the true heart of the void, and the signals become strange. The radar reveals vast, repeating geometric patterns, perfect grids and concentric circles miles in diameter, far too precise to be the work of wind or water. Science labels them unexplained geological formations, perhaps the result of unique crystallization processes in the underlying salt beds. But could they be the foundations of something else? The faint, eroded blueprints of a design so enormous we cannot comprehend its purpose. This is where the drills come in. Long, hollow tubes are driven deep into the earth, through sand and clay and ancient stone, to pull up cores of sediment. These cores are timelines, written in layers of dust and pollen and microscopic life. Each layer is a page from a lost year, a silent testament to the world that was. Scientists analyze these pages for traces of ancient climates, for the volcanic ash that marks a specific eruption, for the fossilized pollen that tells us what plants grew. It is a painstaking process of reading the planet's own memory, a memory stored not in words, but in earth. It is the most direct way we have of touching this vanished past. The cores extracted from the deepest basins of the former Green Sahara are profoundly enigmatic. In layers dated to the precise period of our hypothetical civilization, the pollen counts plummet, but there is no corresponding evidence of a drought. Instead, the sediment contains unusual metallic spherules, microscopic beads of melted iron and nickel, often dismissed as micrometeorites. But their concentration is unnaturally high, and they appear in a steady, almost rhythmic deposition. What process could account for this? Was something filtering the air, or was something being released into it? A byproduct of an atmospheric technology, or a rain of cosmic dust from an unknown source? Findings like this remind us how little we truly know. If you're fascinated by these missing pieces of history, subscribing will keep you close to the next revelation. Every core sample, every satellite image, is another clue in a puzzle that spans millennia. The story is not over. It is still being written, one layer of sediment at a time. By staying with us, you join a quiet exploration into the deepest questions of our past, searching for the echoes of those who came before, and wondering what message they might have left for us to find in the silent, waiting earth. Let us turn our attention to the surface, to a mystery scattered across the sand itself. In a remote stretch of the Great Sand Sea between Egypt and Libya, the ground is littered with fragments of beautiful, translucent yellow-green glass. This is Libyan desert glass, a substance that is over 98% pure silica. For decades, the prevailing theory has been that it was formed by the immense heat and pressure of a meteorite impact over 29 million years ago. Yet no corresponding impact crater has ever been definitively found. The mystery of its origin remains an open and often contentious debate among geologists. The heat required to create such pure glass is staggering, in excess of 1600 degrees Celsius. If not a meteorite,
What terrestrial event could generate such a temperature across hundreds of square miles? The premise of our lost civilization offers a chilling alternative. What if this glass is not the scar of a cosmic collision, but the byproduct of a forgotten technology? A civilization that had learned to harness solar energy with an unimaginable efficiency, or one that used focused acoustic frequencies to melt the sand beneath their feet, using the desert's most abundant resource as their primary building material. The glass, then, is not debris, it is an artifact. Across the Sahara, from the Hogar Mountains to the Tibesti, lie vast plateaus of black volcanic rock known as basalts. These are ancient lava flows, stark and alien landscapes that bake under the African sun. They are considered purely natural, but within these fields of black rock, strange features are found. Perfectly cut stones, immense polygonal blocks that seem to have been shaped, though they show no obvious tool marks. Geologists explain them as a form of columnar jointing, a natural process where cooling lava fractures into geometric shapes. But the precision is sometimes unsettling. Could a civilization have worked with these materials, not quarrying them but shaping them in their molten state? Imagine their structures then, not as buildings of stacked stone, but as sculpted landscapes. They did not build cities upon the earth, they reshaped the earth itself into a city. The basalt plateaus became their foundations, the desert glass their windows or energy conduits. Their architecture would be nearly indistinguishable from geology. We would walk through their grandest temples and mistake them for mountain ranges. We would stand in the public squares of their silent metropolises and believe we were in a natural valley. Their legacy would not be a ruin to be discovered, but a landscape to be decoded. This leads us to the science of archaeoacoustics, a field that studies the role of sound in ancient human sites.
Researchers have discovered that many megalithic structures, from burial chambers in Ireland to temples in Malta, were designed to be acoustic resonators. They amplify and alter sound, often at very low frequencies that are felt more than heard. These frequencies can induce altered states of consciousness, a sense of awe or deep meditative calm. It is a form of technology that is subtle, powerful, and leaves behind no moving parts, only the silent geometry of stone. Now, apply this principle to the Sahara. What if those vast geometric patterns hidden beneath the sand were not foundations for buildings, but immense acoustic arrays? What if they were designed to resonate with the Earth's own natural frequency, the Schumann resonance, a planetary hum generated by lightning strikes in the atmosphere? A civilization built not on principles of mechanics, but on principles of harmony and vibration. They would not have needed engines, perhaps, but only the perfect architecture to tap into the planet's own latent energy. Their power source would be invisible, silent, and all around them. The rock art of the Green Sahara, found in places like Tassili Niger, is our most direct link to its ancient inhabitants. We see elegant depictions of a rich, vibrant world. But among the familiar images of giraffes and hunters, there are other, more abstract figures. Strange circular patterns, intricate lattices, and spiraling shapes that seem more like mathematical diagrams than representations of the natural world. Anthropologists interpret them as shamanic symbols, visions from a trance state. But what if they are more? What if they are the remnants of a different kind of knowledge? Could these symbols be a form of scientific notation, a visual language not on phonetics, but on the universal constants of geometry and physics? The premise speaks of symbols that were part fractal, part biological schematic. Perhaps these rock paintings are a simplified, exoteric version of a much deeper system of knowledge, a primer left on the cave walls by a people who understood the fundamental patterns of creation. We look at them and see art, because art is the category we have for things we find beautiful but do not fully understand. We may be looking at their physics textbooks and calling them pretty pictures. This brings us to the core of the scientific enigma. Every piece of anomalous data, from the magnetic signatures to the desert glass, can in isolation be assigned a plausible, if sometimes strained, natural explanation. The principle of Occam's razor, the idea that the simplest explanation is usually the correct one, compels mainstream science to dismiss the more exotic possibilities. It is always simpler to assume a meteorite we haven't found than to postulate a technology we cannot imagine. It is easier to believe in strange geological processes than in a form of architecture that mimics geology. But when you lay all these anomalies on top of one another, a new pattern begins to emerge. The unexplained radar geometries appear in the same regions as the strange magnetic fields. The desert glass is found scattered above the deepest parts of the ancient river systems. The abstract rock art seems to be concentrated along what would have been the shores of the great prehistoric lakes. A coincidence or a correlation? A series of unrelated natural oddities, or the faint, scattered data points that trace the outline of a single, coherent, and unbelievable truth?
The scientific method is a powerful tool, but it is built upon the foundation of known principles. It struggles when confronted with phenomena that may operate on principles that are entirely unknown. The story of science is filled with moments where the impossible became fact, where the noise in the data turned out to be the signal of a revolutionary discovery. We are faced with a similar situation in the Sahara. We have an immense amount of noise, of data that does not fit our models of geology, of history, or of human potential. The final and perhaps most challenging piece of scientific evidence is the silence itself, the utter lack of definitive, undeniable proof. No bodies, no tools, no inscriptions. For a civilization as advanced as the one we are imagining, this absence is not a refutation, it is the most profound clue of all. It suggests an intelligence that had mastered not only its physical environment, but also its own legacy. It points to a deliberate choice, a decision to leave behind not a kingdom of artifacts, but a puzzle woven into the fabric of the planet itself, a mystery that could only be perceived, never proven. To understand the Sahara's secret, we must first learn to see the world as a text, a vast and ancient book written in stone and sediment. For the most part, this book is consistent. Its chapters follow a logical progression, each one building upon the last. But every so often, we find a page that seems to have been inserted from a different book entirely. These are what we call anomalies, or out-of-place artifacts, objects and ideas that appear in the historical record long before they should. They are like typographical errors in the manuscript of time, forcing us to question whether we are reading the story correctly, or if we have missed a crucial earlier chapter that would explain everything. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, a device of breathtaking complexity discovered in a Roman-era shipwreck.
It is an analog computer, a clockwork model of the cosmos, with gears so sophisticated that nothing comparable would be invented again for over 1,000 years. It is a single, jarring note of mechanical genius in an age we thought we understood. For decades, it was a paradox, a whisper of a forgotten knowledge. It doesn't rewrite all of history, but it serves as a profound reminder that the past is not a simple linear ascent. It is a landscape of hidden peaks and valleys, of knowledge gained, lost, and perhaps one day rediscovered. These anomalies are history's quiet riddles. They are the pyramids of Bosnia, whose controversial origins challenge our neat timelines of European civilization. They are the intricate stonework of Pumapunku in the Andes, where blocks are cut with a precision that seems to defy the tools of their supposed creators. Each one is a loose thread in the tapestry of our past. Pull on it, and you begin to feel the entire narrative structure tremble. They suggest that our map of human ingenuity is incomplete, that there are entire continents of thought and achievement that have sunk beneath the waves of time, leaving behind only these strange, tantalizing pieces of wreckage on our shores. Now, let us apply this thinking to the Sahara. If the Antikythera mechanism is a single, misplaced gear, what would a misplaced civilization look like? It would not be a single object, but an anomaly of landscape and geology. Its signature would be so vast, so deeply embedded in the earth, that we would mistake it for nature itself. It would be like finding a perfect mathematical ratio in the branching of a river system, or a pure resonant frequency humming in a mountain range. The anomaly would not be an artifact you could hold in your hand, but a pattern you could only perceive from a great distance, or with instruments that can see beneath the surface of the world. Imagine walking through a forest and admiring the trees, the rocks, the flow of a stream. You see a beautiful, natural landscape. But then an architect shows you a blueprint, and you realize you are not in a forest at all. You are in a meticulously designed garden where every tree was planted, every rock was placed, and the stream was diverted to flow in a perfect golden ratio spiral. The garden is so masterfully created that it perfectly mimics a wild space. This is the metaphor for our Saharan civilization. We are walking through their garden, admiring the geology, never suspecting that the entire landscape might be a deliberate, breathtaking work of art. The greatest anomaly is the very idea of their sudden appearance. Human development, as we understand it, is a slow, generational process. It takes centuries of trial and error to domesticate a single plant, millennia to develop a rudimentary system of writing. Progress is incremental, a patient accumulation of knowledge passed down around a campfire. A civilization like the one we are imagining defies this fundamental law. It is like a flower that appears in the desert overnight, in full bloom, with no evidence of a seed, a stem, or a root. It is a biological impossibility, an event without a cause,
a conclusion without a premise. This sudden leap in complexity has a real-world parallel that continues to baffle archaeologists, Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. Here, more than 11,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers, people who had not yet invented pottery or agriculture, built a vast and sophisticated temple complex. They quarried, moved, and carved multi-ton pillars with stunning artistry. It is an anomaly that has forced us to reconsider the very origins of civilization, suggesting that the spark of complex ritual and grand construction may have come before, not after, the development of settled agricultural life. Göbekli Tepe is a single impossible flower. Our Saharan civilization is an entire impossible ecosystem. Think of the materials themselves, fused sand and polished basalt. This is an anomaly of chemistry and engineering. To turn sand into pure glass requires immense, focused energy. To work with basalt, one of the hardest rocks on Earth, requires tools and techniques that should not exist in the Neolithic world. It's like finding a perfectly woven silk tapestry in a caveman's dwelling. The material itself is a contradiction, a silent testament to a level of technology that simply does not belong. It forces a choice. Either our dating is wrong, or our understanding of the possible is far too limited. The evidence in the Earth says the dating is correct. Let us use a simple, everyday metaphor. Imagine you find a perfectly smooth, manufactured glass sphere on a remote, untouched beach. Your first thought is that someone must have dropped it, but then you find thousands of them, all buried at a specific depth in the sand, a layer that dates back 10,000 years. The single sphere is litter. The thousands are a geological impossibility. This is the difference between finding a strange arrowhead and finding hundreds of square miles of vitrified desert. One is a curiosity. The other is a paradigm-shattering discovery that points to a lost science of matter and energy. The structures are another layer of the anomaly. Our world is built on right angles and straight lines, a very human geometry imposed upon the chaos of nature. But the patterns beneath the Sahara are different. They are based on fractal geometry and celestial alignments.
Imagine a city designed not by architects, but by mathematicians and astronomers. Its layout would reflect the spiral of a galaxy, the branching of a fern, the precise orbital paths of planets. To a ground-level observer, it might not even look like a city. It would feel like a strangely harmonious natural landscape, its purpose and design utterly lost on an eye accustomed to the simple logic of the grid. Their agriculture, too, would be an anomaly. We think of farming as an act of conquest, clearing land, plowing furrows, imposing order. But what if their method was one of symbiosis? What if they didn't cultivate plants, but communicated with them, using sound or resonant frequencies to encourage growth without ever breaking the soil? The archaeological record would show a land of incredible biodiversity and health, but with no signs of traditional agriculture, no plows, no irrigation canals, no silos. It would look like a pristine, untouched paradise that just happened to be incredibly productive, another layer of their artistry mistaken for a fluke of nature. Perhaps the most profound anomaly is that of their silence. Great civilizations, as we know them, are loud. They carve their triumphs on monuments, write their laws on tablets, and bury their kings with boastful inscriptions. Their goal is to be remembered, to conquer time by leaving an indelible record. The Saharan civilization did the opposite. They left behind no written language, no depictions of leaders, no stories of their deeds. Their silence is absolute, and in a way, perfect. It is an anomaly of intent. It suggests a psychology, a philosophy that is utterly alien to our own relentless drive for legacy. Every time we peel back one layer, another mystery appears beneath it. If that curiosity resonates with you, consider subscribing to follow along as we uncover more. This journey is not about finding final answers, but about learning to ask more beautiful and more profound questions. The story of our past is far from complete, and the most incredible chapters may still be buried, waiting for those patient enough to listen to the silence and wonder what it might be trying to tell us about who we were and what we might yet become. This silence can be understood through a metaphor of music. Human history is a loud, often chaotic symphony, with each civilization adding its own instruments and melodies, all competing to be heard. The music of this lost people was different. It may have been a single, perfect chord, held for 1,000 years and then released. Or perhaps it was a piece of music written in a frequency too low for human ears to hear, a silent, vibrational composition that shaped the very stones around them. We are searching the score for notes when we should be trying to feel the resonance that still lingers in the concert hall.
Their symbols, the fractal and biological schematics, are another facet of this quiet communication. Language, as we use it, is a translation. It takes a complex idea and encodes it into a series of arbitrary sounds or marks. But mathematics is not a translation. It is the thing itself. The ratio of pi is the same everywhere in the cosmos. A fractal equation will generate the same pattern on any world. By using this universal language, they were not speaking to us or to anyone. They were simply stating a fundamental truth, carving a law of the universe into the rock as a form of meditative practice. This represents an anomaly of consciousness. Our own intelligence is deeply intertwined with ego, with the individual self. Our art, our science, our religions are all expressions of this self, this I that seeks to understand its place in the world. What if their consciousness was different? What if it was collective, a distributed network of minds that operated as a single planetary intelligence? Such a consciousness might not have a concept of individual legacy. It would not need to write stories about heroes, because the entire civilization was the hero of its own story. Its only goal would be a deeper understanding of the cosmos of which it was a part. Think of a coral reef. It is a single, massive, living entity composed of millions of tiny individual polyps. It builds vast, complex structures, creates a vibrant ecosystem, and communicates through chemical signals. Yet there is no king of the coral, no single polyp directing the work. The reef is a decentralized, collective intelligence, building its world according to a silent genetic blueprint. Perhaps our Saharan civilization was a conscious version of this, a human reef whose great work was not a pyramid or a temple, but a state of perfect, harmonious existence. The absence of graves is another haunting silence. Across the globe, human cultures have developed elaborate rituals for death. We build tombs, mounds, and mausoleums. We bury our dead with their possessions, with prayers for the afterlife. Our relationship with mortality is a cornerstone of our identity. Yet beneath the Sahara, we find no cemeteries, no royal tombs, no remains at all. It is as if death for them was not an event to be memorialized, but a process to embrace, a simple and silent return to the ecosystem. This could be compared to the life cycle of a forest. When a great tree falls, it is not a tragedy, it is a gift. Its body becomes nourishment for the soil, a home for fungi and insects, a nursery for new saplings.
The tree does not need a monument, because its legacy is the continued life of the forest itself. What if this civilization viewed their own lives in the same way? What if they had a technology or a biological understanding that allowed them to dissolve back into the world, their consciousness reabsorbed into the planetary whole, their bodies becoming part of the vibrant green world they called home? These cascading anomalies of time, of material, of intent, of silence, paint a picture of a civilization that is not just technologically advanced, but philosophically divergent. They challenge our most basic assumptions about what intelligence is for. We see it as a tool for survival, for expansion, for overcoming nature. They may have seen it as a tool for observation, for harmony, and for ultimate dissolution. They did not seek to conquer the world, but to understand it so perfectly that they could merge with it, leaving no trace behind. And so the desert becomes the ultimate metaphor. We see it as a place of death, of absence, of endings. But perhaps it is the opposite. Perhaps it is a monument to a different kind of life, a life that measured its success not by what it built, but by how gracefully it could disappear. The emptiness is not a void, it is a statement. The silence is not an absence of sound, it is the sound of a choice being made, a final, collective exhalation that still echoes in the wind, a quiet reminder that there are other ways to be intelligent, other ways to be human, and other ways to leave a mark upon the world. When the evidence falls silent, when the earth itself refuses to give a definitive answer, we are left with the most human of tools, the imagination. The silence of the Sahara is not a void, but an invitation to speculate, to build bridges of logic and wonder across the vast abyss of the unknown. The hypotheses that emerge are not meant to be answers, but rather thought experiments, ways of stretching our own consciousness to accommodate a mystery that transcends our familiar narratives. Let us drift into these possibilities, not as investigators seeking a culprit, but as dreamers, exploring the architecture of what might have been, following the faint echoes of a story that refuses to be forgotten entirely. Let us first consider the possibility that this civilization was not a beginning, but an end. Our history is pockmarked with myths of a great cataclysm, of a global flood, of an ancestral paradise lost to fire and water. What if these are not myths, but the fragmented, distorted memories of a genuine predecessor civilization? A global, technologically advanced culture that existed long before our own recorded history, perhaps in the age before the great ice sheets made their last retreat. Their world was shattered by a planetary-scale event, like the cometary impacts proposed for the Younger Dryas period, an event that plunged the world into chaos and ended their age in a moment of cosmic violence. Imagine this predecessor world. Perhaps it was a maritime civilization, its great cities of crystal and metal now lying miles beneath the ocean's surface, their memory surviving only in the whispered legends of Atlantis. Their understanding of physics may have been based not on mechanics, but on frequency and consciousness, allowing them to achieve a harmony with the planet that we can barely conceive. They would have mapped the stars, understood the great cycles of the cosmos, and seen the coming cataclysm written in the slow, inexorable wobble of the Earth. They knew their world was about to end, and they prepared not for war, but for remembrance, for a way to preserve the essence of their knowledge. The cataclysm, when it came, was absolute. It was a sundering of the world, a moment that reset the planet's climate and erased nearly every trace of their existence. But not every trace. Small enclaves of their knowledge keepers, their scientists and philosophers, may have survived in protected regions across the globe. They were the inheritors of a dying world, tasked with carrying a single flickering ember of their vast knowledge into a new, primitive age. They found a temporary haven in the blossoming paradise of the Green Sahara, a world reborn from the ashes of the old, a perfect, quiet place to perform their final act. Their purpose in this new Eden was not to rebuild their fallen empire. They understood that the cycle had turned, that humanity had to begin again. Instead, they sought to create a final, silent testament, a time capsule for a distant future that might one day be capable of understanding it. They were not building a city to be lived in, but a library of fundamental principles. The geometric complexes were not palaces, they were equations manifest in stone. The acoustic resonators were not temples, they were instruments designed to store information in the standing waves of the Earth's own vibration, a message encoded in the music of the planet itself. Their sudden appearance, then, is an illusion. They were not a Neolithic tribe that inexplicably leaped forward 10,000 years in an instant. They were the last remnants of a civilization that had already lived those 10,000 years and more, bringing their ancient, refined knowledge to a new land. They possessed the science, the mathematics, and the philosophy from the world before.
Their project in the Sahara was a final, poignant act of curation, a quiet effort to ensure that the most profound discoveries of their long history would not be lost to the universe forever, but would be planted like a seed in the deep geology of the Earth. And what of their disappearance? It was not a sudden vanishing, but a slow, deliberate dissolution. Having completed their great work, having encoded their wisdom into the landscape, they had no need to preserve their own culture or identity. They were the librarians, not the book itself. They likely integrated with the surrounding Neolithic peoples, slowly and carefully, allowing their bloodlines and their knowledge to be diluted over generations. They became the quiet strangers who taught the local tribes how to track the stars, how to find water, how to shape stone with impossible precision, their identity fading into the mists of folklore. The legacy of these inheritors would be subtle but profound. It could explain the scattered anomalies that appear across the ancient world, the sudden sophistication of Göbekli Tepe, the advanced astronomical knowledge of Nabta Playa, the whispers of godlike teachers who came from a sunken land. These were not independent inventions, but the faint, scattered sparks thrown from the dying fire of that one great lost civilization. The Saharan complex was the final, concentrated ember of that fire, a silent monument to a history so old that its only surviving record is the planet itself, patiently waiting for us to learn how to read its stone.
This vision of our past places humanity within a much larger and perhaps more humbling cosmic context. It suggests that intelligence is not a fortress to be built, but a frequency to be tuned into. It posits that we are not alone, not in a universe of starships and empires, but in a universe of quiet gardeners and patient observers who may have tended to the growth of consciousness on this planet and perhaps on countless others. Our own frantic, noisy civilization may simply be another experiment, another beautiful and chaotic flower growing in their vast, silent garden, its ultimate purpose still waiting to be revealed. There is a third path, one that turns inward, not to the past or to the stars, but to the earth itself. What if this civilization was neither an echo of a lost world nor the result of an external gift? What if it was a natural, recurring phenomenon of the planet itself? This hypothesis suggests that the Earth is not merely a stage for life, but a participant, a vast, slow intelligence that periodically gives rise to a higher state of consciousness in its dominant species. This civilization was not an anomaly, it was the predictable flowering of a planetary cycle, a form of Gaian intelligence made manifest.
We, in our modern world, may be living in an exhalation, a period of disconnected, individualistic consciousness, blind to the possibility that the Earth itself is dreaming, and that one day it may choose to dream through us again, turning our noisy world silent and harmonious once more. These hypotheses, whether born of a forgotten past, a distant star, or the deep mind of the Earth itself, converge on a single profound point. They shatter the mirror in which we see ourselves. For centuries, we have gazed upon our own reflection and seen the pinnacle of creation, the planet's first and only truly conscious mind. Our history, we believed, was the only history that mattered. But this lost civilization forces us to look again, and in the reflection, we see the faint, ghostly outline of another face looking back from across an impossible gulf of time. Our story is no longer the story, it is merely a story, the latest chapter in a book whose opening pages we may never be able to read. Our solitude in time is an illusion. This realization compels us to redefine our most cherished concept, progress. We have built our world on a simple linear equation where progress equals growth, expansion, and an ever-accelerating accumulation of technology. We race forward, convinced that the future holds a greater prize than the present. The silent people of the Sahara offer a radical, unsettling alternative. What if true progress is not a line stretching toward infinity, but a circle that returns to a point of perfect understanding? What if the ultimate achievement of an intelligent species is not to conquer the stars, but to achieve a state of such profound harmony with its world that it feels no need to build anything further? Our frantic climb may not be an ascent, but a movement in the wrong direction entirely. The discovery of a message encoded in the Earth's geology transforms our perception of the planet itself. We have treated our world as a passive stage, a collection of resources to be cataloged, extracted, and consumed. This new perspective reveals it as a living library, a silent archivist, a hard drive of cosmic memory capable of storing not just fossils, but fossilized thought. What other messages lie dormant beneath our feet? What silent truths are written in the crystal instruction of the Antarctic ice, or in the deep, undisturbed sediments of the ocean floor? We may be living on the surface of a story so vast and ancient that our own history is but a footnote, a noisy interruption in a long and patient planetary monologue we have forgotten how to hear. This journey also forces a quiet revolution in our understanding of consciousness. We experience it as a deeply personal, isolated phenomenon, a flickering candle of awareness locked inside the fortress of the skull. The possibility of a collective, Gaian, or externally seated consciousness suggests that it may be far more fluid and pervasive. What if consciousness is not something we generate, but a field that we tune into, a signal that the planet itself broadcasts? This idea dissolves the boundaries between the self and the world, transforming our search for meaning from an individual quest into a collective act of listening. Our own thoughts may not be entirely our own, but echoes of a much larger, more ancient conversation happening all around us all the time. From these revelations, a new and necessary humility must be born. Our modern world is built upon a foundation of certainty, a belief in our own exceptionalism and our ultimate mastery over the forces of nature. The story of this lost civilization reveals this confidence as a form of youthful arrogance. If a people of such staggering wisdom could exist and then choose to vanish, it implies that our own ambitions of permanence, our empires, our monuments, our desperate attempts to carve our names into eternity may be profoundly naive.
The greatest sign of wisdom may not be the power to shape the world, but the grace to recognize one's own small, transient part within its immense, unfolding story. We are not the final word, but merely a fleeting breath. This discovery would necessitate the birth of a new kind of science, a new form of archaeology. Our current methods are designed to find the familiar, the shard of pottery, the foundation of a wall, the inscription on a stone. They are tools for a history of objects. To find a civilization like this, we would need to learn to search for the unfamiliar, for patterns instead of artifacts, for resonance instead of ruins, for mathematical constants instead of written words. It would be a science of deep listening, requiring its practitioners to be not just analysts, but poets and philosophers, trained to recognize the signature of a mind that expressed itself not in language, but in the silent music of the cosmos itself. At the heart of this narrative lies the inescapable theme of transience. The Green Sahara was a fleeting paradise, an ephemeral Eden that bloomed and then vanished. The civilization that inhabited it did not fight this impermanence, they embraced it as a fundamental truth. This serves as a powerful and deeply unsettling parable for our own era. As we confront the realities of a changing climate, we are forced to acknowledge the fragility of our own world. The Sahara story reminds us that no civilization is permanent, that all gardens eventually return to sand.
The ultimate question it poses is not whether we can stop the change, but how we will choose to face it, with a desperate struggle for control or with the quiet wisdom of acceptance. If we consider the hypothesis of an external influence, our entire search for extraterrestrial intelligence is turned on its head. We have been scanning the heavens for the noisy, energetic broadcasts of a civilization like our own, assuming that any advanced intelligence would be desperate to announce its presence. But what if the most advanced beings in the cosmos are the most silent? What if their communication is subtle, patient, and woven into the very fabric of planetary systems? The great silence of the universe may not be a sign of absence, but a testament to a form of wisdom so profound that it has no need to shout. We have been listening for a broadcast when perhaps we should have been looking for a garden. Ultimately, this entire thought experiment funnels down into one fundamental question: what is the purpose of intelligence? Our civilization has implicitly answered: to solve problems, to build better tools, to overcome nature, and to ensure our own survival at all costs. The silent people of the Sahara seem to offer a different, more contemplative answer. Perhaps the true purpose of intelligence is not to act, but to witness. To be the universe's instrument for perceiving its own beauty, for comprehending the mathematical elegance of its own structure, and to reflect that understanding back into the cosmos for one brief shining moment before returning to the silence from which it came. A purpose not of doing, but simply of being. And so, we return to the modern desert, to that vast, sun-baked expanse we once saw as empty. It is no longer a void. It is now a symbol of the great unknown that lies not in the distant stars, but very deep within our own planet's past. Every dune is a potential page in a lost book. Every grain of sand is a letter in a forgotten alphabet. The hot wind that blows across its surface is no longer just moving air. It is the exhalation of a forgotten world, a sigh that carries a story we can almost, but not quite, decipher. The Sahara has been transformed from a place of absence into a sacred space, a grand and unreadable monument to a perfect, intentional silence. This story forces us to look with new eyes upon our own legacy. We are a civilization of noise and permanence. We build towers of steel and glass that scrape the sky, fill the airwaves with a constant stream of data, and launch probes into the void carrying messages, all driven by a deep, primal fear of being forgotten. We scream into the darkness, "We were here." The Saharan people suggest a different path. Their legacy is not an object, but a question woven into the very geology of the world. What if the most powerful legacy is not the noise you make, but the elegance and grace with which you fall silent? A truly chilling thought for a species so utterly obsessed with its own immortality. The Gaian hypothesis, the idea of a planetary consciousness,
is perhaps the most transformative of all. It suggests that our current state of disconnected, individualistic awareness is not the only way for humans to be. It opens the possibility of a future evolution that is not technological, but psychological and spiritual. Could our species one day reawaken to this deeper, symbiotic connection with the Earth? Is it a state we can achieve through our own efforts, or a gift that the planet must bestow upon us? It reframes the future of humanity from a story of our own making into one of conscious participation in a much larger, slower, and more mysterious planetary unfolding. This journey, in the end, leads us to the quiet and humbling edge of what can be known. We can speculate, we can find scattered clues, and we can build elegant hypotheses, but the true nature of this civilization, their minds, their philosophy, their experience of reality, may be forever beyond our comprehension. This is not a failure of our science, but a necessary lesson in intellectual humility. It teaches us to find comfort in mystery, to see wonder not only in the answers we find, but in the infinite resonant depth of the questions we are finally learning how to ask. The greatest discovery is the realization of how much we do not know. We are left where we began, with the whisper of the wind across the dunes. But the silence it carries is no longer empty. It is filled with these immense possibilities. It is the silence of a choice made, of a purpose fulfilled, of a graceful exit from the stage of existence. It is a quiet, persistent question aimed directly at the heart of our own noisy, frantic world. It asks us to look at all we have built, all we have conquered, and all we have become, and to wonder, in the deepest, most honest part of ourselves, if we have fundamentally missed the point. The story of this lost civilization is not therefore a historical account. It is an invitation to look at the blank spaces on our maps and in our histories, not as evidence of absence, but as reservoirs of infinite potential. It is an invitation to listen to the quiet places of the world and to wonder what secrets they keep. The ultimate implication is not that we have lost a piece of our past, but that we have gained a new and more profound sense of awe at the mystery of our own existence and our small, fragile place within it.
Vast, silent, and unfinished story of the cosmos. We return, in the end, to the place where our journey began, the Sahara. But we no longer see an empty wasteland, a monument to desolation. We see a shroud, a deliberate and sacred veil drawn across a history too profound for our own. The endless ocean of sand is transformed into a grand, unreadable monument, not to what was lost, but to what was willingly let go. The wind, once a mere sculptor of dunes, now carries the faint, resonant echo of a choice, a cosmic sigh from a people who understood the beginning and the end. They knew this paradise was fleeting, and in that knowledge they found not despair, but a purpose. They chose to leave behind not a kingdom of stone, but a single perfect question woven into the fabric of the world. This quiet revelation shatters the mirror in which we have always viewed ourselves. Our frantic climb of the ladder of progress, our obsession with legacy and permanence, suddenly seems so profoundly naive. We are a civilization that shouts its existence into the void, terrified of being forgotten. They were a civilization that whispered a fundamental truth and then fell silent, confident in the planet's ability to remember. We are left to wonder if our linear path forward is progress at all, or if we are simply walking away from a deeper understanding they once possessed. Perhaps the ultimate achievement of a species is not to build a world that lasts forever, but to live so completely in a single moment that forever becomes irrelevant. The Earth, we now understand, is not a passive stage for our dramas, but a silent, living archivist. The message in the lakebed, that fossilized thought encoded in the deep clay, was not intended for us. It was a final, elegant report filed in the planet's own vast library, a testament to a form of consciousness that saw the world not as a resource to be conquered, but as a partner in a cosmic dance. What other truths lie dormant in the deep memory of the stone and the sea?
What other cycles of consciousness has this world nurtured and reabsorbed? We may not be the planet's first intelligent mind, but merely its most recent, and perhaps its most forgetful children, living atop a library of forgotten dreams. This journey compels us to ask a final, humbling question. What is the true purpose of intelligence? Is it to solve the puzzle of survival, to bend the laws of physics to our will, and to push ever outward into the darkness of space? Or could it be something quieter? Perhaps the ultimate function of a conscious mind is simply to be the universe's way of witnessing its own beauty, to comprehend the silent mathematical elegance of a fractal, to feel the resonance of a planet's hum, and to reflect that understanding back into the cosmos for one perfect moment. A purpose not of doing, but of being. A legacy not of what was built, but of what was understood. And so we are left here, under the vast, star-dusted canopy of the desert sky, listening to the silence. It is no longer an empty silence. It is filled with the weight of a history we can never truly know, and the gravity of a choice we can barely comprehend. The whisper of the wind across the dunes is a lullaby for a world that has fallen asleep, and a gentle question for our own, which is just beginning to wake. In the face of such a profound and elegant exit, what will our own story be? What will be the final word we write into the memory of the earth before we too return to the patient, waiting dust?